laughing behind the glass at me already. This is Michael Russo from The Athletic. Brett Blakemore's laughing back at the studio. We're coming to you from the bowels of Grand Casino Arena. I'll be filling in here for Barreiro this fine 3 hours and 15 minutes. Kevin here holding my hand across the glass.
No, I'm not. Not literally or figuratively. Yeah. No way are we holding hands. It's the Bob Kurtz Radio Center. It's up
Bob Kurtz Radio Center.
In case you need any type of reminder.
Yes, exactly. Really fun show, jam-packed with guests. Just got a late addition as well. Dave Jackson, one of my favorite referees ever that worked this fine sport in the National Hockey League. Now the greatest rules analyst on television for ESPN. He's actually in town with Bob Wischusen and AJ Malesko tonight. Doing the ESPN Plus Hulu telecast. So he's going to swing by the last hour and maybe join Joe O'Donnell and Joe Smith and myself in the studio as well. John Vanbiesbrouck, who I covered him.
You discovered him, right?
I discovered him back in the day with the Florida Panthers. I think he played for the Rangers before that. 98 Olympics with Bill Guerin, by the way. Pretty much runs USA Hockey right now. He's going to join and talk a little World Junior Championships, Olympics, and maybe we'll take a trip down memory lane when I covered him about 30 years ago. Kevin, I'm sure you're going to join that. Nico Sturm joining as well. Harman Dayal from The Athletic, our Vancouver Canucks writer. We're going to talk a lot of Quinn Hughes, Marco Rossi, Liam Ogren, and Z Boyum. Alec Lewis from The Athletic. We're going to talk about the big Vikings news today with J.J. McCarthy out with a hand injury. And assistant general manager Matt Sells, and maybe Matt is one of the is the person that Bill Guerin has credited with throwing the idea in his head for the first place of getting Quinn Hughes. So we're going to talk about how that all came about, and man, what a turnaround since October 31st, Kevin. Yeah. This team 19-4-2 in that stretch has climbed from 13th in the West to third in the National Hockey League. Obviously, they lost the other night against the Colorado Avalanche. The Wild, that was their sixth game in 9 nights, 7th and 11. In that span, the 6 and 9, Colorado played 3 times. So I think we saw why they might have had a little more energy for that game.
The schedule's been unbelievable, and it's not an excuse. I mean, Colorado was the better team that night. It would be fun to see them on an even playing field, because I don't feel like that game was. It was such an emotional game against Edmonton, and everyone said the right things going into that game against the Avalanche. But unfortunately, it just didn't feel like they had that extra, that oomph that we've seen since November 1st.
Yeah, they've been playing a ton of hockey. And, you know, I said this on X to a couple fans yesterday, and I'm not trying to make excuses for this team, but look, this is not a video game. You just don't throw lineups into a computer and spit it out. These are real human beings, and sometimes you're just fatigued. And I mean, I said this on my podcast with LaPanta yesterday. If you think about it, game 41 of this season is New Year's Eve in San Jose.
Yeah.
When have they played half a season in two and a half months? Like, usually the midway mark of a season is a couple weeks into January. And here it just shows you how much hockey they've played in this condensed schedule. And sometimes teams just come in fresher, and that was clearly the case with the Colorado Avalanche the other night. And you'd love to see them in a situation where maybe both teams were equally as rested and what could happen. But I just think that was a game where just the Wild, they tried to come out the first 5 minutes and take control of the game. They still had a chance to steal a point if they could just do something on that power play in the third period. And it just didn't happen.
To me, it's unbelievable that we're talking about the same season when it was so thick around here, coming out of that loss to Pittsburgh at the end of October, the 9th loss out of 12 games. Think about how bad it was at the end of October and how thick the atmosphere was around here. And now we're talking about a team that's right there in the conversation from all the NHL wonks, as Barreiro would call them, across the National Hockey. They're talking about the Avalanche, the Stars, and the Wild in the same conversation in the Western Conference, and then put them right up there with the elite teams in the Eastern Conference. It's hard to believe that we're talking about the same team now that we were talking about at the end of October, because it felt like the end of the Evison era when those games were going on and they just couldn't buy a win. They couldn't do anything right. And yet here we are. We're talking about one of the elite teams.
Yeah, they looked old. They looked slow. And now I look back at some of the things I wrote back that month, some of the columns, and I wish we could scrub them right off our...
you instigated them.
Exactly.
It's on you.
Jared Spurgeon had a team meeting. We've written about it to death in The Athletic, but the big thing is normally after a loss like Pittsburgh, where you've lost 9 of your first 12 games, you're going to close the door and go crazy as a team. And what he decided to do is, let's go home, sleep on it, he gathered some thoughts together, got in touch with the leaders like Marcus Foligno and Kirill Kaprizov, corresponded back and forth with John Hines, and actually had a really substantive, healthy conversation the next day where they closed the door before practice. And he sent a text to everybody, said team meeting, players only, and they aired it out. And they've been a totally different team since. And I know
it's not even close.
Yeah.
And that's what's so funny about that. It's not a small, like over a weekend or a week or even a month. They've, out of those 25 games since November 1st, they've pulled in 40 out of a possible 50 points. The same team that lost 9-12 to open the year. And that's why it's so incredible, the complete 180 that they've done in that short amount of time. And I know that the addition of Quinn Hughes is going to mean big things for this team going forward, but this body of work that they've done, only 4 or 5 of those games have had Quinn Hughes in the lineup. It's unbelievable what John Hines, the leadership, and everyone else inside that Wild locker room has been able to cobble together. And now, for good reason, you look at what they've got with the goaltending. I think their defensive core is just as good as anyone in the National Hockey League. And then you throw on top of that Kaprizov and Boldy playing like the superstars that they are and can be. All of it has culminated into just a wonderful 25 games.
And we'll talk to Matt Sells about this, the Wild's assistant general manager, but and maybe he can confirm, but other than Damon Hunt, who, when they're healthy is not a regular on this team, yep. I think this is the first time all season that they've had their entire healthy lineup, because remember, Brodin started the season not playing.
So does Zuccarello.
Yeah, so to me, and then Sturm was out, so this has got to be the first game tonight where they've had their entire lineup with Zach Bogosian back in.
And that's the other thing that's so weird about this stretch is that they've done those numbers that I talked about in those 25 games. They've pulled in 40 out of a possible 50 points with never a full lineup and missing significant pieces. And the good thing is you haven't been missing Boldy, Kaprizov, or your goaltending, but you, at one point last week, I think the trip to Columbus, you're missing half of your defensive core.
It's crazy.
You're missing 2 of your top 6 in Zuccarello and Johansson. And yet here they are. They're still pulling in wins on a pretty regular basis. Again, it didn't work out for them against the Colorado Avalanche, but still, you're 1-1 on the season against them. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, and that game in Columbus, it was impressive. I mean, guys like Ube Cabell in the lineup and Matt Kierstead, who I thought was great that night. Carson Lambos makes his NHL debut, was great that night. And to your point, I mean, they are playing shorthanded, and they're somehow cobbling together points, which is just crazy throughout that stretch. And now they're healthy, and we'll see if they can continue to play well.
Can I ask you a question? So I know you've documented it quite a bit in The Athletic and at theathletic.com, but the addition of Quinn Hughes, you can get into it, Matt Sells and all that. A quick story, the one weekend I chose to take off in 25 years, I don't take that many games off, but my kid had a hockey tournament in Coleraine. Do you know where Coleraine is?
No.
It's north of Grand Rapids. So it's a 3-hour drive. We're up there, and we took the weekend off, and I went up there. He had 2 games on Friday, and I'm sitting there on Friday night in Coleraine. It's called the Snake Pit, watching my Bantam play hockey, and all of a sudden, I'm talking to my son. He's babysitting our 84 dogs at home, and I ask him how things are going at home. He says, it's fine, the dogs are this and that. And he goes, hey, by the way, did you see this news that the Wild got Quinn Hughes? I said, yeah. Okay, and what else? The Easter Bunny is driving my car around? He says, no, the Wild got Quinn Hughes. I said, that absolutely did not happen. And as I'm talking to him, hockey dads start coming up to me from left and right. The buzz inside the Snake Pit in Coleraine, it starts going out of its mind. It's incredible, the buzz as that news started to filter out. I still didn't believe it until I read it on The Athletic and theathletic.com that, in fact, Quinn Hughes had joined the Minnesota Wild. How did it happen from your vantage point?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I was more north than Coleraine. I was in Edmonton at the time. And here's even more embarrassing. So that morning, besides the fact that I talked to Bill Guerin twice that day and had no idea. I'm like, I remember I said to him at one point, I'm like, anything going on? He goes, absolutely nothing. And then I said to him after the trade, I'm like, you could have hinted something. He goes, no, I figured we'd have a good chuckle about it after. I'm like, great. Well, here's the more embarrassing thing is I'm up there and I'm working on a feature on Ellen Hughes. Ellen Hughes is Quinn, Jack, and Luke's mom.
Yep.
And I'm up there doing this feature for the Olympics on her role for USA women's hockey. And she's late coming on the ice. And I was supposed to sit down with her that day. And all of a sudden she's like, hey, can we meet maybe in Minnesota? I'm going to come for Jack and Luke's game there on January 12th. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And next thing I know, I'm back at the hotel and I get a call from somebody saying that this thing is going down. And right away, he doesn't know who it's for. All I know is it's Boyum, Ogren, and Rossi to Vancouver.
Wow.
So now it's like 25 minutes that I'm waiting. I know it's got to be Quinn or Elias because that's the only thing that makes sense there. I'm thinking it's Quinn. They have the same agent. I'm texting him. I'm texting people in the organization.
You don't think that's what it would have taken to get Kiefer Sherwood?
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, I get the confirmation to go with it. So we throw it out there, and then it's just pedal to the metal. Joe Smith and I working on story after story after story, and it was truly exhilarating. And a lot of times when you're doing a story like that, you're really not digesting how franchise altering this is, how big it is. You're just letting whatever comes out of your fingertips is what's essentially the plan. And then we finally get done that night. I get Rossi on the phone. We write a roster projection, and then it's like take a deep breath and then figure it out, and then now come back with actually stories that make sense the next couple days. But it was truly an unbelievable moment. What a franchise-altering trade. Unfortunately, it cost them 3 great players and a first-round pick. But look, that's to get a player like Quinn Hughes, you have to give up players like that. And man, I think Vancouver did a tremendous job. And we'll talk to Harman Dayal from The Athletic about this later in the hour. But man, what a run for the Wild to get to him.
So you've been here the better part of 2 decades, and you've seen the vast majority of the big moves within this franchise. The free agency signing of Suter and Parisi, of course, right at the top of the list of big moves that have altered the shape of this franchise, and those were monster. But in terms of trades, I was thinking about some of the ones that would even come close. To me, this is number one with a bullet. Yeah. But Burns for Coyle and Setaguchi, that was a big one. Yep. Bringing Devin Dubnyk in was a pretty big one. That changed that entire season for the Minnesota Wild and what he did for them between the pipes. Niederreiter for Clutterbuck. I mean, there's not very much that comes even close to what this is in terms of what the impact is of this franchise.
I mean, this is one of the biggest trades that I've ever covered in the NHL, and I think that I can't think of too many NHL trades that are bigger. I mean, obviously Gretzky going to LA. But I covered an eight-piece trade, Pavel Bure going to Florida once from Vancouver as well.
Pretty big one.
Isn't it interesting that like the 2 biggest trades in Canucks history, I was the beat writer for, only one down there and one here. So it's just it really is just an exciting moment in team history. We've already seen how good he could be on the ice as he gains more and more chemistry with these guys. I mean, the other night against Colorado, he could have had 3 or 4 points if players are catching stretch passes, if they had more chemistry on the power play. I'd love to see him on the ice a lot more with Kaprizov, I think, or Boldy. I think that would create a lot of magic, and it's just a huge, huge thing. And as long as they can re-sign him, I think that Wild fans will realize how much of a game changer this is and get some on par. When you got to beat Colorado and Dallas every year, and they've got guys like Heiskanen and Makar, and it puts you on the plateau here, and Quinn is as good as it gets in the league. When we come back, we will have John Vanbiesbrouck, one of those players that I covered in the Florida Panthers back in the day. Took them to the Stanley Cup Final in 1996, a cast-off team in just their 3rd year of existence. But he also is the head honcho for USA Hockey, or one of them, and part of the group that is brought World Juniors here to Minnesota, but is also going to be here on December 28th to meet with Bill Guerin and the rest of Bill Guerin's staff to pick the Olympic team. We'll be right back with Beezer here on The Fan. This is Michael Russo.
The Fan.
Michael Russo from The Athletic back here on The Fan, filling in for Dan Barreiro on this beautiful, what day is today? Tuesday? Day before New Year's, or Christmas Eve. In the Wild, last home game until January 12th, I believe. Isn't that crazy? As they hit on the road here for a 7-game road trip, because the World Juniors are taking over Grand Casino, and one of the men that have brought the World Juniors here is a massive part of USA Hockey. He is a United States Hockey Hall of Famer and one of the best goaltenders in NHL history. 3rd most wins amongst American-born goaltenders. And I had the pleasure of covering him many, many eons ago down in Florida when he took the Florida Panthers to the Stanley Cup Final in only the 3rd year of existence. John Vanbiesbrouck, how are you?
Michael, good to be with you. How are you?
Isn't it crazy? I'm doing great. Isn't it crazy actually how long we've known each other? You knew me when I was just a young know-it-all, and now today I'm just an old know-it-all.
Time goes by fast in this game. There's no doubt about it.
Isn't it crazy, like, when you think about how many players from that team are still in the game? I mean, you and Mellenby and Lindsay and Jovo and Jody Hull and Stu Barnes and Garpin, it goes on. And then you think of the kids of those players that are still, like, Connor Murphy and Adam Lowry, and there's so many huge tie-ins to those Florida Panther teams.
Yeah, it's awesome. Tommy Fitz, general manager in New Jersey. Yeah. I mean, and seeing his kids, too, grow up and become pro hockey players. And it's just a fun piece to look back on the early days of the Florida Panthers, and now look at them now, the past 2 Stanley Cups. So very proud of the organization for sure.
Yep, and your name, number, and likeness is all over that arena, which is still absolutely awesome. And John, you were a huge part of the Olympics, 1998. I still remember you going into Nagano, and you obviously a couple World Juniors in there as well. And now here you are, pretty much running the show at USA Hockey. How did you get back into USA Hockey after your career ended in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I started just by being asked to volunteer. One of the great things about USA Hockey is its board and volunteerism, and the game had given me so much that I was thinking, boy, what can I do? But it wasn't until basically 2007, and Lou Vero asked me, hey, why don't you come to some meetings and you might be able to help us out? So I started to attend and got involved, and prior to doing this for 10 years, I was a volunteer, more on the junior side, but I got to know the structure, how it works, the open forum, and how the whole body works. So it was really a great time of learning for me, and it was a way of giving back.
Yeah, and we're talking with John Vanbiesbrouck in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. Pretty much the head honcho with USA Hockey or one of them. And John, I just still remember one when I was a kid being a huge fan of yours, and you win the Vezina, and but the other thing that I always loved about you is how scrappy you were. You look back at your day at 310 penalty minutes. That's pretty unreal for a goaltender.
Yeah, don't tell my grandkids that. I don't know if they've looked that up yet, but I competed hard. There's no doubt about it. I did some foolish things, and it is a part of the DNA of a hockey player. But I mean, undersized a bit for a goalie, and just wanted to compete hard. I had my compete on a lot, no doubt about it. And but you learn how to control your emotions, especially now in this position. You really have to be under control.
Weird question, John, but do you think, you talked about being undersized as a goalie. In today's day and age, it doesn't feel like that there are a lot of goaltenders of your stature. I mean, do you think in today's day that you would have been as accepted and gotten the chance that you did back in the 80s and the 90s?
Probably not. And that's based on the fact that the style is so much different, the equipment so much different, and the way that it's coached. It's a position that really wasn't coached back in the early 80s. And, as we got through the Miracle on Ice and you watch Jim Craig, and that style of goaltender into, National Hockey League, and you can start naming. There was only a few guys that were Ken Dryden, Berkey was a tall goalie. And you start going through it, John Davidson, who I had the pleasure of playing with in New York. But the tall goalies, there wasn't a lot of them, and it's just that phase and that time of the game where you had to kind of create your own style, follow Tony Esposito and some of those types of guys that were kind of trailblazers for the position. But to answer your question directly, probably not a chance for a 5'9" guy to get a shot now.
What was it like working with Billy Smith in Florida, one of the scrappiest goaltenders there ever was?
Billy was very calm. He was very, very cool and understanding. He wanted to do some video work. It wasn't heavy in video at that time and video coaching. But I totally liked working with Billy. I respected him, obviously, for his success. And, for a guy that was known as Battling Billy, he was a very mild-mannered guy off the ice, and we got along real well.
We are talking with John Vanbiesbrouck, the assistant executive director of hockey ops for USA Hockey, and in town for the World Juniors. I'm going to be starting. Everybody's up in Duluth. I've heard you taking over Scott Sandlin's office up there, and you'll be soon coming down here to the Twin Cities to start the tournament right after Christmas. John, and Wild fans, by the way, a couple really good players that the Wild, that if you're a fan of Finland, Kivirarju, and also Adam Benek for Team Czechia. What do you I got to go to some of the games over at Ritter Arena this summer to watch some of the teams. Obviously, Bob Motzko is coaching the team. How have you guys looked so far, and who are some of the players that hockey fans here in the Twin Cities will get to really appreciate in the coming weeks?
Yeah, I mean, from the summer forward, we didn't have a great summer. And so we were a little concerned coming out of the summer, but I think unfortunately, I was going to mention the name Trevor Connolly, but he got hurt recently and is not going to play in the tournament. So that's a big loss for us, as he was playing for the Vegas Golden Knights, a minor league team in Henderson. So that's a loss. And so we have depth, and other guys have fill the roles there. And I think that our returners, Cole Hudson is one name that everybody knows his brother Lane, but Cole led the tournament in scoring last year, returning to us, a left shot, very dynamic point guy. He and Zeev Boom have led the way for us last year on the D side, but we have some really good young right shot defensemen. One of the guys to watch out for is a draft eligible, and Chase Reed, who I think is going to turn a lot of heads in this tournament. So, as a draft eligible and a young guy, it's hard to do in the tournament, but he is really playing well. And so as we move to the forwards, I think everybody knows Brody Zemer from the U, real captain type player. He's going to be on a line with James Hagan's first-round pick to Boston, who's really fun to watch. Great edges, great playmaking ability. But the guy that has really stepped up in college hockey this year is a former player's son, as we were talking about, is Will Horkoff. Mm-hmm. And Will, playing at the University of Michigan, 18 goals coming into the season, has just looked great. And 6'5", left shot, plays the left side, great power play guy. His season has just been fantastic, but we do want to give a shout out to our another former player's son in Max Plant. Max is probably the leading candidate this year for the Hobey Baker, playing at Duluth. His emergence this year is probably not a surprise to everybody, but a great playmaking, great head for the puck. He's just an overall hockey player. So those are some of the names.
And obviously, Bob Motzko at the helm led the United States to coach the United States to a gold medal in 2017, and it just made the perfect sense, John, to tab him as the coach in his right in the shadows of Mariucci.
Yeah, it was just a great fit. Bob's a winner; he's a proven winner at every level he's coached at. But the fit for us going to Minnesota and having Bob at the helm, and for hopefully having everybody behind us, not only from the University of Minnesota, but from the state of Minnesota and beyond. I know that for the first time since I've been doing this, my family's going to come, and they're all talking about it. I mean, the vibe of what's happening from the Minnesota Wild, and obviously obtaining Quinn Hughes, has created a huge impact. And, someone we know really well, and Bill Guerin, who, we owe a lot of debt of gratitude for, not only at the facility and the room and allowing us to do things, but just being a USA Hockey guy first and leading our Olympic movement too, with being the GM of that team. So we have some really good ties going on, and that helps us. It helps us with everything that we have to do, and it makes our flow of work really professional.
And Billy, your former teammate at the '98 Olympics. By the way, does your son Ian still live here?
Yeah, Ian lives down with his family, his wife Kristen, and 2 kids, Elliot and Hannah. They live in Rochester, Minnesota. Okay.
I don't know if you remember, many, many years ago, I actually was helping a buddy of mine move into an apartment in Roseville, and all of a sudden I'm looking at the the directory of people that live there, and it said Vanbiesbrouck, and I took a picture. I'm like, this has got to be your son. So many
yeah,
times
he was
ago.
going to Bethel. He was going to Bethel at the time, and I remember that. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Last question, John. I mentioned at the top of the show before you were on that December 28th, Stan Bowman, Tom Fitzgerald, Chris Drury, Bill Zito will be coming to town. You'll be here, Pat Kelleher, I'm sure, Chris Kelleher, to meet with Bill Guerin and have a Zoom probably with the coaches to maybe make the final selection before the Olympic team is named on January 2nd on the Today Show, I might add. These are really tough decisions, John. I can't even imagine what you guys are going to, and when you have such a huge crop of players that you all have, obviously there are going to be some good names left off. But how excited are you about putting this team together that can maybe bring a second gold medal in the last 45 years to Milan?
Yeah, we're super excited about the team. I think those that watch the Four Nations got a glimpse at our group, and probably going to be very similar to that group, but it's hard decisions. And the other factor in this, Mike, and for everybody listening, is just the injury factor right now. Mm-hmm. There's just so many things going on right now. And as we get to, naming our team and then managing our team is really going to be a hard piece, because everybody's nicked up in injury. It's some of the long-term fluky things that have been happening. We just have to stay on top of it. But our staff, led by Billy and the other GMs you've mentioned, are doing a great job. They communicate a lot. They're all winners, and we have total trust in them to, make the right decisions for the right reasons.
Well, and great goaltending, as you know, John, potential on this team with Hellebuck and Swayman and Ottinger, and you have other couple nominees as well. So, I'm sure you're going to have backup plans for all the potential injuries, but I can't wait to see who is named to that team on January 2nd at 8 a.m. Eastern, that time slot on the Today Show.
Yeah, tune in to the Today Show to get that information. Hopefully it doesn't come out sooner than that, but seems like the team's been picked every week for the last month anyway, so...
Yeah, I picked my...
It's fun actually seeing people name our team and then actually sitting back and saying, you're wrong about that and you're wrong about that. But for the most part, everybody's got 80% of it right.
Yeah, even the other night I was watching, I'm like Brock Nelson, you could see why you guys love him. But even today, like you said, I picked my team today, and I apparently ticked off the entire state of Texas because I didn't have Jason Robertson on there, so I know that these are hard decisions. But Beezer, really appreciate it, and have a great time during the World Juniors, and good luck to the United States.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and let's go USA.
Yep, that is a USA Hockey Hall of Famer and one of the great American goalies of our time, John Vanbiesbrouck. This is Michael Russo from The Athletic, filling in for Dan Barreiro. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to Quinn Hughes and the big trade that happened with the Vancouver Canucks on December 12th. Harman Dayal, one of our Canucks writers at The Athletic, he'll be joining me next on The Fan.
Make memories this winter at the 2026 IIHF World Juniors in Minnesota. See the bright young hockey players, best in the world, compete for gold. Bring your family and experience the excitement. Get your tickets today, mnsportsandevents.org, mnsportsandevents.org.
Slow for the shot. He scores! Welcome to the state of hockey, Quinn Hughes. It's 4-0 Minnesota.
Michael Russo from The Athletic, back here on The Fan. Lots of shows still to come, thanks to John Vanbiesbrouck. We got Matt Sells, the Wild assistant general manager, Alec Lewis from The Athletic, our Vikings beat writer, Nico Sturm from the Minnesota Wild, and then Dave Jackson from ESPN, the rules analyst, will be coming into studio. He's in town for the ESPN Plus game, Wild in Nashville tonight. We got Joe Smith, Joe O'Donnell coming on as well. And my next guest, there are dinosaurs like me, Michael Russo, by the way, that have been doing this for a long, long time. We're in the twilight of our careers. We don't know anything about analytics, all that stuff. And then we got young up-and-coming writers that are just the smart people at The Athletic. And this is one of them, one of our Canucks writers. But you've seen him do so many great national stories for us that combine video and analytics and all that stuff. Harman Dayal, how are you?
I'm doing great, Russo. You're seriously underselling yourself, though. You're an absolute legend, and I look up to you as one of the best writers in our industry. So don't sell yourself short. I feel a little bit embarrassed with an intro like that.
Well, I appreciate it, and you can definitely follow Harman as well on X and read his fine work at The Athletic. I mean, there are just so many great stories that you have every day, and we're a huge part of so many of our great stuff the last couple weeks here on this unbelievable Quinn Hughes trade that shocked, I think, a lot of us. You have been, you and Thomas Drance, who are both in Vancouver, and you do a lot of radio and podcasts in Vancouver as well. We've all been talking about Quinn Hughes potentially being on the move at some point. In the last 3-4 weeks, it really became, looking at him on the ice, apparent that he was no longer happy there. And so it started to come out that they were already starting to talk trades. But did you have any idea that this would come as quick as it did with a trade on December 12th and to Minnesota of all teams?
Yeah, I certainly didn't imagine Minnesota being in the picture. They didn't stand out to me as one of the obvious candidates. I was looking out east to teams like Carolina, to New Jersey, to Detroit as potential destinations. I think I had a feeling, just looking at Quinn's body language and even just going back to the way last season ended, the disappointment of missing the playoffs and how much of a weight it was just the Pettersson-Miller feud and how much that would have weighed on Quinn as a captain trying to play peacemaker in that, where I wasn't confident that Quinn was going to stay long-term. And I think the turning point was when Elliott came out with that report that the Devils had called, because I immediately got, texts from managers from different teams sort of taking that as a sign that, okay, the auction has started. And I think the moment that report came out and became so public and the rumor mill started accelerating, I of course didn't know when exactly it was going to get done, but it didn't come as a shocker that he was traded. The surprise really was that it was Minnesota at the end of the day that ended up winning the auction.
Absolutely. And I remember about 15 minutes before or 20 minutes before I tweeted it out. First of all, I got this call that the Wild had traded Zeev, Liam, and Rossi to Vancouver, and I immediately alerted Joe Smith, my editor. But then you just know that it's Elias or Quinn, right? It's got to be one of the two. I remember writing the tweet and having it sitting there, and my hands were shaking, because it's I wanted to just tweet it, but even though I was convinced that I was right, if you're wrong even about one of the names, man, do you look stupid? What if you tweet out that Zeev Boyum's been in this deal and then it turns out that he's not? You're just never going to live that down as long as your career. But then when it became apparent that Vancouver did so well, before we get talking about Quinn, were you surprised that they were able to get such a really quality price back and 3 really good players and another first-round pick that makes it the equivalent of 4?
I'm not entirely surprised that they were able to get a lucrative haul, because in the aftermath of some of the rumors starting, I actually wrote a piece where a lot of the buzz was around Hughes and the Devils, with the obvious connection that he has with his brothers. But the point that I made is that the Canucks have more power and leverage than people realize, and more options, because Quinn didn't have trade protection. And while he, at the end of the day, was really involved in the process of the trade getting done, and the Canucks wanted to do right by him and send him to a destination that he was actually excited to go to, the fact of the matter is the Canucks didn't owe it to Quinn to send him to New Jersey specifically, and also just some of the other dynamics at play, where the point that other execs made to me was if any team acquires Quinn now, they'll have a unique opportunity to extend him in the summer, where they'll be able to offer him the eighth year under the terms of the current CBA, and all the front-loaded structure, the signing bonuses. And the kicker is that even if, worst case, you aren't able to get Quinn extended, you can still flip him to another team for an absolute haul. And the point there was, as a buying team, even if you don't 100% know that Quinn is going to extend, you're going to feel pretty confident about A, being able to financially offer him more than any team can this summer, and then B, worst case, you still have an insurance in terms of being able to flip him to another team and recoup a ton of assets. So I'm not entirely surprised that the Canucks were able to get a significant haul, but the package specifically, I mean, Canucks fans have rightfully been excited about it. I mean, Zeev Buium specifically, the potential that he has to be a star defenseman one day. I don't think any team could have realistically topped that package. And just around the league, canvassing people's opinions, they all thought that that while it's a home run for Minnesota to land a superstar of Hughes' caliber, how the Canucks made out very well at the end of the day as well.
Absolutely. Marco Rossi is going to be, I think, a top 2 center in this league. Obviously, we've seen Liam Ogren play great so far for the Canucks, and then they get the first rounder as well. Everything you said there, Harman, made absolute sense, especially on the fact that the Wild could maybe recoup some of those assets if Quinn doesn't want to sign here. And what I loved about Quinn is that he gave Vancouver much notice that he was essentially not re-signing there. So you know that if it ever came to the point that he just decided, you know what, I want to test free agency, that he's going to give the Wild plenty of notice as well, where they're going to be able to react. And so I think that is a huge thing. We're talking with Harman Dayal from The Athletic, covers the Canucks and a bunch of national stories for us as well. What happened with Quinn there? Why did it not work out where he just couldn't take the losses anymore? Obviously, we heard all the noise behind the scenes of just, controversies there with, Elias and JT Miller, and now stories out that maybe Elias and Quinn grew apart. What happened?
Yeah, ultimately Quinn is as competitive as of a player as I've seen and have had the privilege of covering. And to me, it's really about the lack of faith he had in the teams, not just where they were today, where they started the season and were 32nd place in the NHL by the time they pulled the trigger on that deal, but also just having a lack of confidence that it was going to change anytime soon, where the Canucks had some up-and-coming young talent, but they didn't have any franchise-changing pieces. And ultimately, the way you have to think about it is this. 2 years ago, when the Canucks won the Pacific Division, made that run to the second round of the playoffs, Game 7 against Edmonton, that team had 6 players that made the All-Star team. So it wasn't just Quinn. It was JT Miller, and Brock Besser was a 40-goal scorer, and Elias Pettersson was still at that point producing at a legit elite level. Thatcher Demko was the runner-up for the Vezina conversation that season. And then you look at what's transpired since, where JT Miller, because of the feud he had between him and Pettersson, he's gone. Elias Pettersson, mysteriously from the 2024 All-Star break onward, has been unable to be like he's mysteriously fallen off a cliff, where even though he's modestly bounced back this season, we're not talking about the 100-point two-way stud that we were 3 years ago, for example. So you've lost a legit co-star there. And then Thatcher Demko is brilliant and sensational as he can play when he's healthy. The fact of the matter is, he's become an injury-prone player where there's no guarantee that he is going to be able to play a consistent starting goaltender's workload over a course of a season. So you just look at the nucleus around Quinn, and he was essentially left on an island where not just this season, but the year before, it was, if Quinn isn't able to carry the team all by himself on the back, no one else is going to be able to realistically step up. And it just got to a point where I don't think he saw the vision for how the organization was going to be able to contend for a Stanley Cup in the future.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I know this was a tough decision for him. I coincidentally, I was telling earlier in the show, Harman, that I was in Edmonton with USA Women's Hockey a couple of weeks ago during the rivalry series. And so I got to spend a lot of time with Quinn's mom, Ellen. And after the trade, she told me it was bittersweet, that it was unbelievable the way the Canucks treated her son, especially the owner, who I know gets a lot of flack there as well. And this had to be tough. I talked to Brock Besser for a story that I wrote last week, and he kind of painted the picture of what it was like on that bus when all Quinn's teammates found out that he was traded, and how angry and sad he was even, and he and the final meal that they had. So, I mean, Quinn was absolutely loved there. Turning our attention to the Wild, Harman, you have your finger on the pulse of all teams. How do you think, when you look at the Wild's lineup, that Quinn fits in, and how much better does he make them?
Oh, he's a game changer, especially from the back end. I think the Wild needed, I love Brock Faber. I love Spurgeon, Brodin, but I think what could have really and is really going to take this Wild Blue line to the next level is somebody that is just a natural power play quarterback, somebody that can create offense in their sleep, just another elite play driver to have on the ice. And for Quinn, I'm really excited to see what this also looks like when the Wild are healthier, right? When they get fully healthy on the back end, because right now you're having to use Quinn and Faber together in a tough matchups role where, look, Quinn defends well enough that I have full confidence that he can absolutely crush those minutes as well. And we saw just how dynamite he was against McDavid the other night. But what does that look like when let's say Minnesota's second pair can take on some of those tougher matchups, and then you absolutely free up Quinn and Faber to play middle six competition? I mean, like, that's going to be something that makes the Wild unguardable, especially when you look at now the talent they have up front too, where with Kaprizov you've got a game breaker, Boldy you've got a game breaker, Quinn Hughes you've got a game breaker, and then Wallstedt and Gustafsson are one of the league's best goaltending tandems. It's certainly closed the gap between them and the Dallas Stars. And look, there's still some distance to be had with the Colorado Avalanche, but that's true for every team in the NHL. I don't think anyone's close to Colorado right now. But I think this is the kind of move where when you add a superstar of Quinn's caliber, who isn't just going to make an impact on the power play, not just offensively, but is going to be one of the league's best play drivers on a night-in, night-out basis, I think that takes the Wild from a spot where previous to the trade, I didn't view them as a realistic cup contender to, all right, they've got a legit chance to go on a deep run. And look, it's unfortunate with the way the divisional playoff format is that you could profile as a legit cup contender and still end up bounced in round one if you end up playing the Dallas Stars in round one. But I don't think there's a huge gap right now between the Dallas Stars and the Minnesota Wild. And I think if Guerin hadn't made a trade like this, I just don't see how the Wild within the next few years would have even had an opportunity to break through and be an actual formidable team that could go on a deep postseason run.
Yeah, and I don't think he's done. Last one for you, Harman, because I know you got your own radio show to do. Let me ask you, has the sting worn off with the fans there? Obviously, Quinn was incredibly beloved, but now, you all have to move on, and then you see how good Marco Rossi can be, how good Zeev Boyum can be, how good Liam Ogren can be. Do you think now that Canucks fans are starting to get excited that whatever you want to call it, a hybrid retool or a rebuild, has been accelerated by adding 3 really good young players?
I think everybody's excited by the package, without a doubt, especially seeing the way that Ogren played on the weekend, and he was viewed by many as the sort of afterthought after Boyum and Rossi. But I think for this fan base, the more important question is whether this organization actually commits to the kind of rebuild that will allow this team to build up more than what they already have, which I think the way a lot of people are looking at it is, all right, this is a great starting point for the next phase that the Canucks are entering in, but they want to see this organization continue to sell, continue to accumulate draft picks, hopefully land a top 5 or even a top 3 pick this year, so you land a potentially elite player. I think more than just the Quinn trade return, which everybody's on board with, it's about what comes next and actually having a plan that is future oriented. Where I think over the last decade, this franchise has been impatient. It's chased shortcuts to pursue short-term competitiveness. They've traded away a lot of draft picks, and they haven't shown a lot of patience. And I think that's going to be key, where if they do build the right way, then I think the pain of losing Quinn is going to be minimized. But if they end up making missteps along the way, and they end up, let's say, trading Minnesota's first-round pick for Wendell Help, and they have an aggressive July 1 free agency, and you can tell that, okay, they're not actually rebuilding in a proper way, then I think that's where the pessimism is going to grow again in the market.
Makes absolute sense. Well, take care of Rossi, Boyum, and Ogren there, Harman. I'm telling you, these are 3 great kids, great pros, and you'll absolutely love covering those 3. They're gems.
Thanks, Russo.
Yep, that is Harman Dayal of The Athletic. You could follow him on X as well as at Harman Dayal, too. That's Dayal, by the way. Dayal, that's Harman Dayal, one of the greats at The Athletic, just an absolute star on our staff. When we come back, we're going to talk really the nitty-gritty of how this Quinn Hughes trade came about when Matt Sells, who was the original person that put the seed in Bill Guerin's mind to actually go and swing for the fences here. Matt Sells, the Wild's assistant general manager, will be coming up next with me on The Fan. We'll be right back.